It's a questioning. All right, either way. Okay, well, Ms. Kelly will go first. Thank you.
Well, thank
You're
you,
recognized. You're recognized.
Rep. Trahan. And thank you to the Chair and Ranking Member for holding this very important hearing to discuss the importance of AI's role in the future of American manufacturing. Last Congress, I joined former Rep. And now U.S. Senator Lisa Blunt Rochester and Reps Dingell and Wild in co-leading multiple bills to make up the Supply Chain Act, which garnered the support of over 160 stakeholders. These vital bills would have established a new office within the Department of Commerce charged with monitoring supply chains, identifying supply chain gaps and vulnerabilities, as well as addressing supply chain risks. Unfortunately, many of these critical provisions were pulled from the bipartisan continuing resolution that failed to receive a vote. Dr. Reynolds, based on your experience with the supply chain shock during the pandemic, do you agree that it's important that the federal government take a leading role in mapping and monitoring supply chain vulnerabilities? Excuse me.
Well, thank you, Congresswoman. It's an important question and one that I lived and breathed for my couple of years in the White House. I still have PTSD, I think, from the experience. But what we learned from that experience at the beginning of the COVID crisis was that, in fact, maybe the U.S. government did not have sufficient information. We knew that about supply chains. But what was more disturbing is that the private sector didn't have the information either. When the semiconductor crisis hit, and we brought in a lot of the semiconductor companies or leaders in auto and medical device, they themselves were not clear what their supply chain looked like and what the semiconductor industry, and supply was facing. So it really underscored the role of government here, that there is an important role for the federal government to play to try and collect the data, to obviously in a way that's respecting privacy, to disseminate the data and be able to look around the corner at what the next vulnerability will be. And so while we have really made, I think, significant progress on that, we have to realize there's a long way to go. And I applaud the work that you have done and the creation of more capabilities at the federal government level to do this. If we think about the recent crisis we had after Hurricane Helene hit, and all of a sudden the one facility that produced IV fluids in this country was wiped out, was that something we could have predicted ahead of time? Would we have known that that was a challenge? And in fact, I think AI, generative AI, will be helpful for us to understand our supply chains and our vulnerabilities. So I think it's an incredibly important area. I think we now look at the U.S. economy in a way that we never did before, through the lens of supply chains, and I applaud that work.
Thank you. Illinois has a history of manufacturing as one of the largest manufacturing centers in the Midwest. Chicago and other parts of my district became a hub for trade and commerce due to its access to strategic waterways and railroads. I believe that Illinois' history, coupled with existing infrastructure to accommodate large industrial sites and manufacturing facilities, will ensure the state has a major role in the U.S.'s effort to increase domestic manufacturing. But to accomplish this goal, we must ensure that small and medium-sized manufacturers can compete. And Dr. Reynolds, in your written testimony, you mentioned that there are 250,000 small and medium-sized manufacturers in the U.S. and that we need financial incentives to help them make the leap into digital manufacturing. What are your best arguments for why, in this budget-constrained environment, we should invest more federal funds in small and medium-sized manufacturers?
Yes,
as quickly as you can.
We've been talking about the role of the SME as the backbone of manufacturing for this country, and I bring that statistic forward, the 250,000 small and medium-sized firms in the country. If we just wanted 20% of those to be digitally advanced and leading the country, that's 50,000 small and medium-sized firms, and right now we have no way of reaching those firms through any direct mechanisms. So what we have to really think is creatively, how do we try and support those firms at scale? And I think the argument here is that we know that our small and medium-sized firms are less productive than our larger firms. And the positive spillover effects that happen if we can get them to become more productive are important not just for national security, which would be the first argument you made. We have a shrinking supply chain base, and our defense industrial base is really suffering from that, to the extent that the DoD highlighted in its National Industrial Strategy report last year. Supply chain resilience among our SMEs is critical for them. But we need that not just for defense and national security purposes, but also for the supply chain resilience. As we are looking at ways in which we're trying to invest in resilience, not just efficiency, we really have to see how our small and medium-sized firms play into that and how we can support them in being more resilient.
Thank you, and I'm out of time. I yield back.
I think the gentlewoman now will recognize Representative Kane for his